Welcome to the Super Gamer Podcast. Welcome to the new Super Gamer Podcast, episode 196. Our guest this week is a video game journalist and content creator since 2015, the head of Pen to Pixels, podcast host and guest frequently on the Indie Council and the Min-Max Show and on many others. Also a variety streamer on Twitch. We have Janet Garcia, or Gameonysus. Thank you for being here.
Hello. Good to be here. It's Gameonysus.
Gameonysus.
Actually, which is fair because it's a play on Dionysus, but some people pronounce Dionysus, so...
Right.
It was not a good... It's not a good name to have chosen, but it is unique enough that I usually can get it, so it has one thing going for it. Hello. Good to be here. You always remember your 196th.
Yes.
So there you go.
So yeah, you do Let's Plays on Tuesdays on Twitch. You do Best Games of the Year every Friday on Twitch. And it looks like on Pen to Pixels too, you've got like best ofs, sort of check-ins through the year. Which I like. I don't know if I've ever actually seen that before. I probably just haven't been paying attention. But I like the idea that, okay, where are we right now in April? Where are we in June, etc.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's tough to keep up with. I am a little behind on quarter ones because it's already April. And then it's so hard to pull the trigger because games are always coming out and then you might miss something. So I'm wrestling with letting go of like, hey, probably won't play a lot more, Yakuza before making this first list. But, that's what the rest of the year is for, hopefully.
Pen to Pixels is your project. Like you were a writer at IGN, PlayStation Lifestyle.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. So yeah deep cuts.
Well, but all I'm saying is, you went the freelance route, and this is sort of, you say on the site that this is a way for you to write things that you really want to write that maybe wouldn't necessarily get picked up as a freelance thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's so great about writing for yourself is no one can tell you no. Obviously, there's plenty of benefit of collaborating with colleagues, having an editor, having funding, many things that you might not be able to get on your own, but it's like I can just cover whatever I want. I don't have to worry about how many views it gets or how much anything. It's just complete freedom to cover games how I want to cover games, and down the line I'd love to look into getting funded just to be able to contract out pieces for people, but I love criticism at its core, and just being able to do however many reviews I can fit into my schedule has been really fun.
Is there ever an issue where you're like, oh, do I write this for Pen and Pixels, or like, should I shop this around?
Oh no, I don't shop anything, really. I was always really bad at it too. Like, shots to the people that, I know in the space that constantly pitch and get like, I have a feature here or a review here. Like, that's never been a strong suit. It's never been a big thing I've done. I usually have had home bases at different websites throughout the years, or even now, like different places where it's like, cool, I work here and then I do whatever. So yeah, I don't really shop anything around, and I don't think I really would. I think I'm down to do stuff at other places, and I have here and there, but for the most part, yeah, I just do my own thing. Like, I don't even send it off anywhere. I just write it for myself.
Prince of Persia: The Last Crown is your first ever 5 out of 5 on Pen to Pixels. So, I mean, does that mean it's the best game ever?
No, definitely not. But it's the best game that I have reviewed for the site.
What makes a 5 out of 5?
I think a 5 out of 5, it's really a 9 or a 10 out of 10 is what it converts to, honestly. And I think it's a game that feels transcendent, a game that feels like a must-play for anyone who's willing to dabble in that specific genre or style of game. I think those are kind of some of the core components. But admittedly, I have long been putting off writing like the page of here's what the scale really means. Like, I have the words associated, like bad, okay, good, great, incredible, but I haven't quite settled on the wording yet, mostly because every time I write it and kind of shop it to my family, they're like, I don't know if that's quite right. And I'm like, I think you might be right. So I just haven't published anything about it, but that's my interpretation of what a 5 out of 5 is.
Right.
Off the top of my head.
How is, there's so many sites that review or critique or whatnot video games. So how do you stand out in a saturated market?
Ooh, that's a great question. Man, I feel like there's a lot of ways you can stand out. I will say, admittedly, I think my brand of criticism isn't like super revolutionary in terms of stylization. Like, I think I do the traditional looking at different components of the game and kind of adding up the sum of its parts in some ways. But to me, I think what makes reviews special and different from place to place, my site included, is the way that you can try to capture the essence of what you're feeling that will make sense to someone who has never played the game and may never play the game and has not necessarily played the games that you have. So to me, it's about adding a layer of, whether it's personal story, whether it's employing like metaphors, some way to conjure the feeling and to paint the picture. And I think that's what makes unique, like reviews unique. I think the other component too can be, to a degree, like the presentation, and that's where like the layout and site design comes in. Admittedly, outside of pull quotes, I don't think I have anything that's too review specific and flavoring. It's funny. I was just talking to a designer friend who's offered to help me out with like doing some elements of redesign to boost up the website, and that's something we've talked about. Like, how are we going to make, like, one vision he had, his name's Justin, he's an incredible designer, Vachon is his last name, is how to make a review distinct. He's like, it kind of looks like how previews look right now. Like, how are we, that's like something that stood out to him as a designer. So I think that's the other aspect of creating a unique feeling in reviews that can kind of separate them.
Well, along those lines, 8 or 9 years ago when you were starting out here, you were doing Weird Wednesday YouTube Let's Plays, among other things.
Hell yeah.
And in your words, you were talking to no one off of your Mac laptop. So when do you think people started paying attention, and why? And do you think that early, like, is it a good experience? Do people need to go through that sort of like, hey, I'm just doing this for me and nobody else is even watching?
I think people probably started noticing immediately, at least like one person. Like I do have some really deep cut fans that have been there for my entire career, which is like so cool. And I don't think that's unusual. There's so many kinds of gaming content. Like, I think your audience will form, and the people that seek out smaller creators or enjoy smaller creators tend to still enjoy the creator even as they grow. So there's definitely an element of that. Like, I think you're one person, assuming they are a person and not just like a Twitch bot, like, could very well be there for a decade plus long in your career. So I definitely don't want to discount that aspect of it. But I think as far as people really noticing at scale, I think it was probably more when maybe like 2017, 2018, I think a bit more traction. Obviously, a lot of people know me from IGN, which was like 2019, but I definitely feel like I had a growing audience in that PSLS era that I had, just because I was like putting out content at like a website and like all of that. Do people need to go through it? I think it's not even that you need to, it's that you have to. Like, I don't think there's a lot of people that really, I don't know, blow up quickly. Like, you can, roll out of bed and just suddenly go from 0 to 100. So it's going to be part of the process. And I think you have to enjoy the work you're doing. I don't think it's necessarily about how many people see it. Like, I always felt like I was creating for other people, because inherently if I wasn't creating for other people, I wouldn't have published it, right? Like, so there's always some level of like, you want people to see your work. You're saying it because you want what you're saying to be shared, and you want to get out there and have somebody receive your message. But yeah, that's just kind of part of it. And I honestly feel like I'm almost completely the same regardless of those scenarios. Like, I've been on Twitch with like not a lot of people necessarily talking in chat, and I still just go. But that's because I like to talk, and I talk a lot. So I'm like, oh, it's like some people really struggle with that. They're like, I don't know what to say if like no one's talking. It's like, I've never had that issue before. Like, it's just my, we all have our different like strengths and things. And yeah, that's just never been an issue for me. So yeah, it's a fun time, but in a necessary time. But obviously for some people it's a little bit more of a struggle, or maybe it's more discouraging. But yeah.
I have a couple things that I need you to answer for. The first being, why do you hate Mega Man?
What I hate Mega Man? I hate that they took the fun of platforming and forced you to recognize patterns. So that's why I hate Mega Man.
All right. I laughed on Bit by Bit, you say that, and you said it's petty little jumps, and I laughed pretty hard at that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, but also a deep cut. Yeah, my project's my friend Jess Reed, who works as a narrative person in the gaming space now at this point. But yeah, it's that. But yeah, and it is petty little jumps. It really is. But the memorization is really where I struggle, particularly the aspect of combat. I don't. There's some exceptions because like I like, Super Meat Boy and that has combat in the bosses in a sense, but the combat is more you're doing things around the environment and like the environment ends up fighting for you because Mega Man has a gun. That's like his whole thing. It's like his arm or whatever. I don't know his anatomy, but it's like it's much more directly combative mixed with platforming, and I find that mixture really too challenging for me to enjoy. And funnily enough, it's also why I don't like Cuphead. It's like, I don't know. It's like I thought I could just jump, and it's like you're really kind of shooting, and you're just, like it's not my kind of game. But we'll see. I'd like to try Mega Man again one day, but I was like, I didn't like this, and I was surprised because it's like iconic platformer. I figured I'd like it by default.
Yeah, fair enough. And the other one, I just finished devouring the Fallout TV show, and I loved it. I don't watch a lot of TV, and I devoured it more. Like Mad Men, I think is the last thing that I was really this into. And you describe it as okay to good.
Yeah. I think it's okay to good. I only watched the first 2 episodes, so I can't speak to the full scope of it. But I think it was fine. Like, nothing about it felt like it demanded to be seen to me, and that to me was what makes it land on okay to good. Admittedly, I'm not my critical expertise is definitely not in film and television, but it is another literary medium in a sense. So like, I've definitely dabbled a little bit here and there. But yeah, I think about the shows that really captured me in a way, and I wouldn't put Fallout as one of them. It's not bad by any means, and if I see the full season through ever, I'm sure it'll be like kind of enjoyable, but not, it's not Severance. And I get like it's a big bar, but it's like I think a lot of times when people see something gets like an okay to good rating, they're like, oh, so like, what do you mean? Like, it's so good. And it's like, and maybe it is, and we just have different opinions, but it's like, well, there's levels to good though, and that scale goes really, really high. So I like to leave a little space there for it, because it's like, I wouldn't put this like on that, you opened with like the Prince of Persia question. It's like, to me, that's like that next broke through tier of titles. Like, if we're not really reserving that for something, why do we even have it? It's like, yeah, so that's kind of it. It's like, do I think this is one of the best TV shows out? It's like, no, but like, it's fine. It's enjoyable. It's better than I thought it would be, but it's not, at that, wow, to me.
Fair enough. What's the story behind your Japanese Pokemon cards? Because you don't collect Pokemon cards, so why did you get these?
Oh, my Japanese. Oh, yeah, man, this is such a deep cut. I have those from when I was a kid. I think they were my brother's, so I feel like this would have to be a him question. I'm guessing he got them because he thought they were cool. I don't know if he got them somewhere else, because I know we have like random things that we got from Mexico at one point, and I wonder if those cards were one of those things, but I don't know. So I'm not sure about that. And then I had them in my like room and stuff for a while because we still had we did, I wouldn't say we full on went into like collecting the cards, because like it's funny, like collections were so big in the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, they're still big now because like people collect plenty of Funko Pops, whatever, but I feel like the Pokemon cards, and that like I was in the Bionicles era and they came out with those lines, and kind of quickly you realize that like, yeah, I don't have the financial access to like really collect any of these things. So you kind of end up with just a couple sleeves. It's like, yeah, we got like a bin of Hot Wheels. Some of them aren't really Hot Wheels, but like, that's kind of it. Like, I'm not going to have a full set. So I think that's kind of it. It's like, they seemed cool, so we had that in our kind of collection, and the sleeve survived that era, and I kind of kept it around, and I have no idea where it is now, but that's sort of how they fell into my lap. I don't think I acquired them. I think they were just like a family set, if you will.
All right. Well, speaking of cards, you were made into a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Queen's Blood card by Bob Buell.
Yeah.
I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The whole Min-Max crew was made into cards. I have never played the FF7 remakes, so I've never played the card game. Are you a good card? Like, are your stats good?
That's a great question. I am quickly trying to scroll to see what I would say short answer yes, because the cards are really versatile. Like Queen's Blood is so fun, and the remake of Final Fantasy has been an enjoyable time overall. Right? If I start to really dig, we got some friction points, but like I'm really enjoying Seven Rebirth when I can pull myself out of a lot of minigame content. But one piece of minigame content that I love is Queen's Blood. It's so good. Let's see, my stats are okay. So I destroyed the card underneath me. I have to my right a 3 vertical, and then to the right of that bottom 3 is, I think, another destruction one. There's like a red and another red, and I forget. I think one is like a modifier to stats, and then one is like a destruction one. I would say like I think that's pretty good because I like how it sort of claims lanes. So like again, I don't know like the how many people will know or not know Queen's Blood, but you're kind of getting almost turf on a little board, and each card you put down has like points associated with it, and you're trying to win each row. If you win a row, you get the points. So it's like 7-6. Like if I have 7 and you have 6, I gain 7 points. You don't gain anything. So then it also becomes like needing a certain amount of a lead to like win or whatever. Yeah, I feel like it's pretty good. It gives me 2 points. It just cost. You need 2 like little pawns, I guess, like there. Like you need to claim the space like 2 times over to like gain the ability to place me. But I think once you do, you gain like a pretty good amount of spaces, I feel like. And there's spaces forward, which I have a hard time moving forward in that game sometimes. So yeah, I think it's pretty good. It's funny, I was looking at that as well. I'm like, what kind of stats do people get? And I'm so curious to ask like Bob, I don't know if he's talked about it on like our other content as like part of the, in the community, us talking to the community, like in bonus pod or anything like that. But I'm so curious to what degree, if any, did the statistical layering go into it? Because I do kind of feel like I'm like, is this Bob's vision of like our personalities in the form of powers in this mini game of this remake? Like, I want to know how deep it goes, but I like to think there is some association and that this says something good about me.
You mentioned your brother there. Do you still do your yearly FIFA tournaments?
We haven't done them in a while, but I do want to bring them back. We've just been like busy, and then we don't live together anymore too, so it's like now we got to go online to do it. But I'm hoping to bring that back for FIFA 25, EAFC 25, actually.
Oh, that's right, eh?
Yeah, started last year, EAFC, or 2 years ago maybe. I think it was last year. Last year, I think.
What's the best FIFA or soccer game that you've ever played? What's your favorite?
I have a soft spot for FIFA, I think either 16 or 17, because that was kind of when I first got really into it. So like one of those are like, well, not early, but for me, early ones were like my favorite. But truly, I do think they get like better every year. Obviously, there's balancing stuff with like the My Player and all that, but I don't do any of that. So like I understand the community has beefs with like the microtransactions, like all that. Like I get that. I do not play that section of the game. So for me, the game is just this one, playing with friends and things. And I love the additional details that they add to the sports sim have really fun to see. I think too, the one bummer in the more recent ones is they lost their contract or didn't renew their contract with Liga MX, which is like the Mexican soccer league, which is like really like sucks because it's like I play a lot of those teams and it's just like they're just not in the game. So holding out hope that I don't know, gets resolved or repursued or something. So yeah, I'll go with FIFA 17 question mark. I feel like it was like maybe second to first or something for me.
For those tournaments you had with your brother, you would always do themes like all Bundesliga or something, Do you have a favorite theme looking back?
Oh yeah. The Bundesliga one was really fun. That one was really fun because we had like the German beers and everything, and I don't think we got food for it, but I like the women's ones are always really fun. And I think my favorite might have to be, honestly, I think my favorite one might have been the Japanese one because like our J League tournament, because I think what's really fun about doing these themed leagues is, especially if it's a league that you don't follow, it's kind of a way for you to get to know the players and the teams. And I was really into like, I think Gambo Osaka is one of the teams that I was like really drawn to. And there's another one, I forget the name of it, but their logo was like a squirrel with like a big fluffy tail. And I love that team. Besides the fact that the logo was awesome, they like really came through for me a lot of times. So that was kind of one of my favorites. And I like that aspect of it. And I feel like our J League tournament embodied that the most. And then it was really fun because at the time, did it all on poster board, like the keeping track. And the design of the poster board, we could just put like the red in the middle to be like the flag, which also looked really cool. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with the J League tournament.
Do you still have any of those physical boards?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think we did agree to toss them because I don't think anyone wanted the burden of keeping them around. It's tough being a big fan of like physical items because at a certain point you do realize I kind of just have a lot of stuff and I don't really need all this stuff. So I think we might have gotten rid of them at this point.
How heated did it get?
Like getting rid of it or the tournaments?
Sorry, yeah, the tournaments.
Pretty not like too heated because I think we both are like fairly level-headed and neither of us are too like showboaty. But I think I was definitely the madder one because I'm not as good as my brother in FIFA, so it's a lot harder. So it's like picture like a really close game, but like you statistically will only come out on top like 25% of the time on those close games. So you have the passion of like being on the edge of your seat, but the sting of consistent failure. And then it's almost worse that he's nicer in some ways. I mean, I prefer him to be nice than to be mean, but it's like, he's like, oh man, like, but you're like really close though. And it's like, but I'm not. Like, it's like, I don't feel like, it's like classic thing, it's funny, he's, in media as well and kind of coming up and all that. And that feeling of like, when you're coming up in media, so many people will tell you, you're right there, like your stuff's so good. And like, that's true, but like, it doesn't end up mattering if you don't get the gig. And that's kind of, and you're just like, yeah, but like, I'm broke or I'm struggling or whatever. And that's the feeling I have in those tournaments generally, especially when I like had never won one that was like really weighing on me. And then finally having won one of the tournaments was at least like, okay, at least I did that. And that's like something, but yeah, so it's, I'd say fairly, but I think it fizzles out pretty quickly because at the end of the day, like, it is just a game, so it's fine. But yeah, it's funny. It's the sting of like if you care about sports and you see like your team lose, but like imagine you're like kind of on the team in a way, but like not 1-to-1, but it kind of has that vibe. It's like, what if you lost the World Cup personally? It's like, what if that was really personal? And that's kind of been, I think the emotional weight of the tournaments, but they're fun.
So I apologize. I'm going to ask a question that I feel like you've probably been asked 1,000 times, but you used to be an English teacher. What made you make the switch from English teacher to games critic?
Yeah, I not always wanted to make the switch, but before I started the career, I pretty much knew I wanted to do games media. I only went to teach because at the time, like I'd just gotten my degree. I did all this work to get the degree. I generally like teaching. And I like was like, okay, let me just use the degree and like give this a shake. And then my plan was to build up my media career on the side. So like by day I would teach and live and make my income. And then I would like build up my career on the side until it was like stable enough to like transition over. And the reason that I left teaching, I only did like the 1 year, was because I realized that while some people can do the like my 40-hour day job and my 40-hour passion project, like I couldn't. I'm like, I just don't have it in me to do it, especially because teaching is such a take your work home with you kind of job. I know like that's obviously a discussion of itself of teachers trying to find that work-life balance and not take, but like you have so much, and it's such an important job. Like if I had had any other job, I probably would have stayed working at a job and doing like my stuff on the side for longer. But it's like the mental weight and the emotional weight of what teaching is, like it takes so much time from you and so much out of you that I'm like, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to grow my media career while also teaching. Like it is not possible for me. And that's why like I left to go do this. Cause I'm like, well, this is what I want to do. So I'm going to work on this. And if I like can't make it, I'll just go get a regular job and then continue to work on it if I want to. And if I don't want to, you could just not, cause you can kind of just do whatever you want at the end of the day within some reason, but like ultimately it's like, okay, you want to give up, you can just give up. Oh, you don't? Okay, cool. Oh, you gave up but you start again? Well, I guess you didn't give up then. I guess you just took a break.
What do you mean when you say you want your gaming experiences and the content you create to be a universe?
I feel like I mean, oh man, what do I mean? I think I mean like the idea of something really thorough and bringing in whatever's necessary to convey whatever I want to get across. So I think like with the, review angle, it's like bringing in any comparison points, metaphors, whatever have you, to kind of get across the idea and the feeling that I want people to understand of like, oh, what makes this game good, what makes this game bad, without you ever having played it, without you ever having seen it. Like, how can I quickly paint this picture and then analyze the picture that I painted? And then I also think just the idea of doing a lot of different kinds of content, streaming, podcasting, writing, like all of it to me is a form of criticism, and they're just different ways to like do the same thing.
You used to write guides, and I'm so curious, like, how do you know that you've got everything in a game? Like, how do you know that your guide is thorough enough? Like, maybe you've missed something.
I think it depends on what the game is. And a lot of times, not all the time, and especially different sites do different guides differently based on what their approach is, the scope of the game, how they just want to tackle the project. So you might be the only person doing a guide, and I've been the only person on some guides, or you might just be one person within a team of people, which is a little bit more common, especially I think now. At the time, I did more solo stuff than I think most people would have people do. And when you're doing solo stuff, it depends on what your assignment is. Because even in that, like when I've had solo guides, usually my job is not to do everything in the game, because that would be too much stuff. So a lot of solo guide work is usually just a walkthrough, which it's like, okay, well, you did it all because you finished the game and the rest doesn't really matter. And then the other things are like more subjective, like tips and tricks, where it's like, okay, it's whatever you think is a useful tip or trick. I think as far as like collectibles, a lot of games do have like some form of in-game tracking. Most games have some element of in-game tracking. Obviously, there are games where like you're still discovering things to this day. I mean, I think about like what the Reddit posts that learned, oh, when Link whistles, the fish will be on shore. Like, people didn't know that, at the time. I'm sure people went in and wrote that back in to a lot of their tips and tricks pages, sourcing back to whatever the originator of where they got the information from is. So that's kind of how you would know, basically. Sometimes talking to other people playing the game as well. A lot of times, not always, especially if you are on like the freelance side of things where you don't have as much direct contact with staff, but there might be like other members playing the game for review or playing the game for podcasts that might be able to answer things or speak to things. Yeah, that's basically it. Then of course, when the game comes out, there's like more information on it out. You can also talk to like the team about things, but that's how you know. Generally, most games, you do have a way of knowing, at least in a general sense, like here are these items or here's whatever. So it's not too bad. But thankfully, a lot of guide projects don't require one singular individual to do every single thing in the game. I think the only time that really happens is if the game is really, really short. But frankly, if a game is that short and that small, it probably isn't doing heavy guide traffic anyway, and probably won't get covered at all or won't need to be covered at that level of detail. So not too bad of an issue. Mostly I would just ask Brendan Graber because he's a really good guide writer. I know when I did The Last of Us 2 and I was working on that alone, and then they're like, we're going to have Brendan jump over and help you. When Brendan got there, I was like, Brendan, thank God you're here. I have not found all these coins and this thing is due real soon. What was I going to do if you didn't show up? Just do my best, I guess. Just hope. I was like, I don't know. So I had him go in and fill that in, and he's so freaking good at that job. But yeah, thank God for teams. I
do like the idea of like, oh, I have a deadline, but I'm like stuck on this boss.
Oh my God. I had so many. One of my first bigger guides that I did was Darksiders 3, and I was so stuck on bosses in that game. The game is so hard, and yeah, you just had to, and that's like the tough thing too when you're like, and this hits more with like a guide, I guess, because the guide is so much more work than a review is. But even with a review or just kind of any piece of content, it's like sometimes what you need in playing a game is like to step away. It's like, oh, tomorrow will be easier. It's like, sure, but now you just lost a lot of time. So that's always been, that's always a rough point too of like doing coverage on an embargo of any sort, because like you don't know how long it's going to take you, or if you get stuck, or if anything happens. You're kind of trying to like always be ahead because anything might put you behind. Yay, deadlines.
Can you describe what your kitchen table work sessions are like?
Yeah, I mean, I usually am on my laptop. I guess exclusively on my laptop. I don't really do work on my phone. Usually, yeah, just pull up the laptop. Sometimes if I'm doing other planning, I might have a physical planner. Haven't really been using my physical planner that much. And that's basically it. If I have space to plug in, I'll plug in. My current table isn't a good plug-in situation, so I try to avoid that when I can. And ideally, the table, maybe I'll have some coffee. Ideally, the table's cleared off before I start working, or at least like all the garbage is like moved to one side. Sometimes other people will be there. Sometimes I'll just be by myself. Sometimes I'll ask like, hey, I'm going to work on the table if, my partner or whoever I live with wants to come through and do some work. But yeah, that's the session.
Cool. I got a couple more questions. I know you've written, maybe you still do. You write poetry. Have you written any poetry that is about or inspired by video games?
Yeah, I did. My what was it called? It wasn't like a senior project. I think it was just a project. One of my classes, like I ended up making this sort of chapbook of like different poems, all centered on like anxiety. And I don't know how many pieces there were, 10 or something like that. And like one of them was inspired by Unravel. And it was like about unraveling kind of like mentally. And the text was sort of presented on the page as being like in pieces. So you'd have like some stuff on the left and the right, and it would kind of like loop around like loose thread kind of thing. Because I was really trying to like play with a lot of my poetry background is performance poetry, like slam poetry, which is like the big thing there is, well, you get to present it and perform it, and that's kind of what gives it its sauce. Like just written on the page, it's like not as strong because it's not designed for page readings. So here I really want to also like work with form and how like form can create, a deeper layer to the pieces. So like that's something I like remember about that. But that was one. I probably did a couple things here and there just as like experiments, but I never really like found, like this poem from like I don't know, Peach's perspective is really good. Like I've probably dabbled in that a little bit, but I think the Unravel one's the only one that's like, oh, this is like a cool piece and I like this piece. It's not specifically about the game, but I thought about it because I was playing the game at the time. And I like the idea of unraveling, kind of ran with that.
When you performed that, did anyone pick up on that theme, or is it pretty, buried in there?
Oh, it's like really buried. It's like I don't think anyone I don't think anyone would notice outside of just maybe the titling or something, but I don't think anyone would draw those two together.
All right, the last thing I'll ask about, you went to GDC this year for the very first time. How was that?
It was really fun. I kind of felt like I had like snuck onto campus because like, I'm in media. I'm not a developer. It's the developers conference. It's like all technical stuff, like peer to peer. And I'm like, and then there's me. And I kind of like, I almost felt like a little bad. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't like, I mean, plenty of media people go, but I'm like, I'm just here like listening to like what you guys have to say. So I did feel a little bit like a fly on a wall in that sense. But it was really, really cool. It's just nice to get a deeper knowledge set on gaming, and obviously like the onus on that is always on me or like whoever wants to gain information. There's plenty of books and talks and articles and stuff, but it's so hard to I think one of the challenge of like working in any craft is, especially if you are like working by trade, like you're not like in a school scenario, like you need to like make money and live. It's like you spend so much time like doing your stuff and making your stuff, you don't always get a lot of time. It's hard to carve out time to improve and grow, and like what are those things that could take you to that next level. So I love GDC as like a moment to like have that learning, kind of like a little like I've always wanted to do like a little sabbatical for myself on stuff. That's like a goal of mine one day, to like really do something with that and like spend some time like studying up on something or like coming up with like a project. And yeah, GSC felt like a little taste of that. So hoping to, really retain and build on some of those pieces of information and try to like weave that into, my criticism, my podcast, all of that.
Cool. People can check you out. I'm scared I'm going to mispronounce it now. Gameonysus.
Yep.
.card.co. That's GAMEONYSUS.CARRD.co. Anywhere else you want people to check you out? What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, on the horizon, I am working on another review. I'm working on a review of Botany Manor. I've talked about that on a couple podcasts already, but I'm trying to get like the actual review out. I'm trying to be better about still writing about games, even if I don't hit like the embargoes for games, because I feel like that's discouraged me in the past from like cranking out content. We'll be working on my best of 2024 list that will come out this month. I'm going to speak that into existence. So those are things coming down the pipeline there. You can check out youtube.com/Gameonysus for my VODs of my Twitch streams, patreon.com/Gameonysus for more content, early access stuff, just to support financially if you wish to, follow for free if you'd like to. And yeah, again, Gameonysus is my handle everywhere: Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, Instagram. And I really hope no one makes any more social medias, because remember that month where they made like 3 different kinds of Twitter?
Yes.
Like, it's funny too, because I was running Min-Max's socials during that. It was like Ben's paternity leave. And I'm like, this job got really like convoluted really fast. I'm like, hey, I set us up with like 8 new accounts. Like, I don't know. We have like accounts everywhere now. It's super weird. But yeah, that's what's coming up. So check it out.
Janet Garcia, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.